Welcome to Divisive Issues, a comic book podcast where we talk about comic books and sometimes other stuff. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
And I'm Phil.
How you guys doing?
I'm
Good.
doing great. Yeah, I'm great.
I have a little frog in my throat, to be honest.
Jesus. Hey, what kind of shoes do frogs wear?
I don't know.
Open-toed sandals.
So this week's episode, we have a bunch of frog puns.
I think that's it. I think that's all we got.
Yeah.
For now.
Do we have a comic to go along with these puns?
Yes. So this week we'll be talking about Frog Thor, or what's it actually called? Thor Croaks.
It has several different titles, which we will go into, but the one I feel like using is Thor Croaks.
Yeah, it's the story in 1985 where Thor was turned into a frog for 3 issues. And even though it's not a super long story, it always shows up on like cracked articles and like best ofs for a lot of different reasons. And I think we're going to talk about why that is.
It sounds like a really stupid premise, and it is. But I don't think they thought it was going to be a cool idea, because even from the first issue, they're like, this is the most unusual Thor story ever published. They're going for like wacky stuff here.
They're playing with the concept. You could tell, we'll get to titles, but like you could tell they're joking the fuck around here.
It's very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
Really long tongue, right?
So, what is the actual premise of Thor becoming a frog?
That's it.
That's not it.
Loki has a plan that he needs Thor to be away for a little while to enact. So he just turns him into a frog. And Thor, like, lives with frogs and helps solve frogs' problems.
Yeah, it's actually, this series is actually 2 like parallel storylines. You have the Asgard storyline, and then you have the Frog Rat War storyline in Central Park.
It's truly epic lore going on here.
Yeah. So that's basically the whole elevator pitch. Before I get into all the backstory on like where this falls in Thor canon, who should read it? Sly.
I think if you're interested in reading Thor, like if you watch the movies and like the more humorous aspects of the movies, I think go read this book, because the books are pretty goofy as well, and this is one of the goofiest Thor stories around.
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
I don't know much about Thor. Like, I haven't read many of the comics, but like in the movies, the humor always comes from the fact that he's so melodramatic about everything. Yeah. And it is great seeing a frog be like, I am the warrior son of Odin. Like, that kind of stuff, the humor really works, I think, in this story.
If you like Thor in the movies where he's always so, like, bigger than life, while everyone else kind of, like, just rolls their eyes and raises their eyebrows, that's definitely taken from a lot of the comic stories, not least of all this one, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So this is written and drawn by Walt Simonson, or is it Simonson?
I fucking know. I don't take my pronunciation for gospel.
Odinson, Simonson. It has to be Simonson. Son of Simon.
He basically revamped Thor in the early to mid 80s, and he's hailed as one of the most beloved Thor runs ever by a lot of people. And if it wasn't for JMS and Kieran Gillen's run, this would be my favorite Thor run as well. But one of the things that makes his run stand out is it's very, very, like, larger-than-life big mythology around Asgard and the gods. And it really builds Thor's world in a way that hadn't really been seen in, like, over a decade since Jack Kirby left the character. And he got rid of... Have we mentioned Don Blake on the show at all?
No. So, just to get to Don Blake... We should mention Thor's backstory a little bit, especially because it's so disconnected to modern day Thor. So basically, Thor was literally created as like a typical power fantasy. Like, it was about a weakling doctor named Dr. Donald Blake, who has like a busted leg, I believe.
Yeah.
And he finds Thor's hammer, and it says, whoever wields this power should have the power of Thor. And he's like, okay. And he smashes the hammer and becomes Thor.
What?
Yeah, he finds a walking stick in a cave, and when he hits it on the ground, he turns into Thor.
Yeah. So it's like, like it was like most goofy 60s power fantasies where a guy will get like superpowers and fuck shit up.
I want to be in the army, but I'm too weak.
Yeah, like
become Captain America.
Captain America is a good example of another character, but Thor started out like that. But
they didn't explain where Don Blake goes when he turns into Thor, or are Thor and Don Blake the same person, for like a good 75 issues. It's basically, that's kind of what the movie's inspired by, where Thor is too much of a hothead, so Odin strips him of his powers and sends him to Earth. But to make it a little extra comics LOL and convoluted, he strips him of his powers and gives him like the memories of like a crippled human to give him like memories of modesty and to like know what it's like to be truly humbled. And then he re-grants him the powers of Thor so that he now has to deal with both sides of it. And it's very confusing. Even though I love Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's Thor, it's something that's really, really hard to explain. And that's why in the 70s, it was really hard for new readers to get into Thor, because that always kind of didn't make sense. And what Simonson does in his first issue is he completely gets rid of Don Blake, almost like willy-nilly. And that's before this Frog story. But Thor just shows up and he's like, I'm not going to be Don Blake anymore. I am Thor all the time now. And Don Blake isn't, as far as I know, isn't really a part of Thor anymore for a really long time.
And he wasn't in movies at all.
Yeah, well, he does have a Don Blake ID card in Thor 1 as an Easter egg, but that's not quite the same thing. So the thing about Simonson's run is it's much more grounded in Asgard than Earth, and it kind of gets rid of a lot of the Earth elements, and it's so much more big and mythological, and they go into like a lot more of the Norse stuff that we see in the movies, and a lot of the Norse like iconography comes from Walt Simonson's run. And the Frog story, the reason why I bring that up is because the Frog story is so right in the middle of his run. His run actually goes from it's about 25 issues, and the Frog Thor story is right in the middle, and it's in between a story where Thor leads an army of soldiers to literally wage war on Hell, and right after that, Thor, like, he's horribly wounded in the battle, and he has to like come to terms with like he's a flawed god who's immortal, but his body is decaying, and he gets like this cool battle armor, and it's a very like, it reminds me of like all the epic Greek myths of like Persepolis, when like they go into hell and all that stuff. And it's so epic that this story is so right in the middle as just like a comedic relief. And I don't think it was ever written to go down in history as like one of the 10 Thor stories you have to read, but because it's so ridiculous, even though it was just supposed to be a lighthearted tale, it kind of has this legacy as like this ridiculous Thor story that's so beloved by fans. And that's why we really wanted to do it, because even though it's the most forgettable as far as Thor's lore goes in Simonson's whole run, it's the one that everyone talks about the most. And it's just so ridiculous.
It's just it's a unique concept, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
What were your thoughts going into this story, Phil? Like, what were you expecting?
I mean, I was pretty sure it was going to be really dumb. I mean, it's like... Comics seem to often have really stupid premises, in my opinion. They just are like, here's a really dumb thing, and sometimes they're able to still make it work within that stupid premise. And I think this is actually... It surprised me, because this was something I really did not expect to be good at all, and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit.
We talk a lot about this in like mainstream pop culture, about like television, and how it's so hard for shows to stay good after like the 5th or 6th season, and the writers usually start to run out of ideas. So that's usually like year 5 or 6. Imagine writing a character that people have been writing for like 30 years, or in some cases 80 years. Like that I think that's why so many of these wacky premises come up, because they're just like, this hasn't been done before, let's try it.
Also, it gets people talking about it. Like, everyone remembers the story because it's like, what the fuck? What's that premise? I want to read it now.
Yeah,
and they had to have known that before they even start. Like I said earlier, they know it's going to be crazy, and they advertise it as, this is like the craziest Thor story ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like even in Simonson's run, one of the cornerstones of his whole run is them like waking up this fire realm and like this giant fire demon that builds throughout his whole run, and it's like a huge, really, really epic story, and it's probably my favorite Thor story. But nobody's ever going to talk about that because it just sounds like Thor fighting a bad guy. The premise is regular, and it's the execution that's really great. Yeah, it's expected. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like saying, oh, if you hear this, there's a crazy Superman story where he fights an alien. Like, okay.
Yeah, but if he's fighting Muhammad Ali, that stands out.
Yeah. So, are we getting into the story? Or are we going to keep going to the backstory? And as I say that, we still have to explain more backstory because the first issue we read doesn't fully explain the Thor frog transformation, Ryan. How does that happen?
So basically, the main story that he's a frog for is from issues 364 to 366 of Thor. But the previous issue, 363, is a tie-in to a Marvel event, Secret Wars 2, that we don't need to get into. But basically, it's Thor is fighting this god figure, and it's a big Marvel crossover, and there's all these other Marvel characters like Power Pack, real heavy hitters, that are like helping Thor. And in just I think it's 3 panels in this issue of this big Marvel crossover, Loki's just there. And he's hanging out with another Thor villain, and he's like, I have this great idea. This is gonna be my best master plan ever. And then he disappears for the rest of the issue, and he like casts a spell on some housewife who's ironing, and then we skip all the Secret Wars 2 stuff, and then Thor's in an alleyway, and he's like, I'm so glad that I beat the villain, and like everything's great. And then this woman just runs up, and she's like, oh, thanks so much, Thor, you're the best, and kisses him, and he turns into a frog. And then Loki mind wipes her, so she just goes home and goes back to ironing, and he's just like, haha, you're a frog now, fuck you, and leaves, and the issue ends.
And for those of you who don't know, Loki's like the trickster god, so this is like a big... I mean, I haven't read the issue where he turns into the frog, but I assume this was some kind of like big trick of his to...
Yeah.
We find out his master plan later, but at the beginning, it really kind of just sounds like he's doing it because he thinks it'd be funny. And that's why Loki's one of my favorite Marvel characters, because he does things sometimes just because it would be funny.
So, the story opens with the title, Thor Croaks.
Yeah.
And it turns out Odin is gone. They believe he's dead in Asgard. And they're prepared...
Odin's like the leader, so...
Yeah. Odin is Loki's father and Thor's father. Loki's Thor's half-brother. And he's played by Sir Anthony Hopkins in the movies. He's the one-eyed, big, powerful super god that rules Asgard, where Thor lives.
And now everyone thinks he's dead, so they're having an event called the All Thing. And they're like, what thing? And they're like, All Thing!
Thor has so many stupid names. And, like, they kind of poke fun of this in the Thor movies a little bit, where they, like, Kat Dennings' character can't pronounce any of the, like, Asgard terms, like Mjolnir.
She calls it Mew Mew.
Yeah, and, like, there's so many Thor things, and they're all from Norse mythology, but we don't, as English speakers, we don't really know how to pronounce a lot of these things. So, like, the All Thing is easy to pronounce, but it's a stupid name.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those names sound dumb. And Odin's name is actually the All-Father, too.
Yeah.
So now, since there's no All-Father, they have to pick a new All-Father, but since they can't be sure if it's a man or woman, they call it All Thing to be safe.
Right.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, in case he's transgender, too.
None of that is accurate.
Well, Loki is a lady later on. Not in this story.
Also, doesn't Loki become like a fucking goat and like get pregnant in the actual Norse mythology?
I think so.
You know, gods are always turning into animals and getting pregnant or making people pregnant. So it's like, how do you know?
You're Greek, Phil.
Yeah.
Are you into turning into a goat and getting pregnant, Phil?
No. Why do these gods turn into animals to go impregnate women? Why not be a handsome man?
Great question.
Is there something like insatiably sexy about like a moose?
They're like the first furries.
You wouldn't understand not being Greek, but sometimes when you see a woman, you just want to be a swan and just fuck her.
Is that what god boners are like? You just turn into various animals?
You know, I think it probably comes from the fact that the gods always manifest themselves as like natural phenomenon. So like
people are also natural.
Yeah, but they don't usually come down as people. And then you can't say Zeus raped me because it's like the swan raped me.
But I feel like it's easier to fight off a swan than like a person.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, none of that is relevant to the story.
So, Kato is actually relevant to the story.
Unless Thor is turned into a frog so he can like mate with the frog princess.
That almost happens. That is a possibility.
Spoilers.
Yeah. So, getting to relevant stuff, Thor's a frog while all this is happening, and everyone in Asgard doesn't know. They're like, where's Thor?
And that's a problem because they're picking a new leader, and they're like, well, Thor should be here. He's the son of Odin, so he's really in line for the throne. And everyone's like, where could he be? How could he miss this? And we know something's amiss because some horse-faced man shows up. I don't know who this is.
Okay, but he's a guy that took Thor's power for a while, but
okay. All I want to say is about Simonson's run is he introduces a lot of cosmic stuff that we're probably going to see in Thor 3 because it's going to be all space stuff. One of which is Beta Ray Bill. He's awesome. He's big. He's basically Thor, but a horseman in space.
And he's like, "Hey, Thor left before me. Isn't he here yet?" And they're like, "No, that means he hasn't arrived for some reason." And that's when we see he's still in New York. Actually, what?
Yeah.
How could I be in New York? Oh. A frog. I've become a frog, he says.
And Asgard's politics are so, well structured that if you're not there on election day, if you're not literally standing on the stage, it goes to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, it's like they have a more direct democracy.
I guess.
They have a pure form of our legal system. It should be admired. But
yeah.
So Thor's a frog, and he's like, rip it, and the text translated to, a frog, I've become a frog. And the notes say, this and subsequent dialogue among the animals is translated from the vernacular into English for the benefit of those to whom the language of the beast is a closed book.
I love that.
See, this is when you immediately know, like, this is a tongue-in-cheek story. The fact that they have a super melodramatic editor's note that, don't worry, he's not speaking English, he's speaking frog. It's when I was like, okay, I could get into this.
So Thor is like, only Loki could have done this. And he starts hopping towards the Avengers Mansion thinking, oh, I have to get the Avengers, maybe they'll help me. But when he gets to the Avengers Mansion, Jarvis, the butler, Jarvis is a AI in the movies, but in the comics, he's just a butler.
He's a guy, yeah.
He's Alfred.
Yeah, he's Alfred, basically. I think that's why they changed it, because they don't want to make another Alfred.
Yeah.
To make Tony Stark too similar to Bruce Wayne.
Even though they already...
Yeah. But, Frog Thor writes using sugar, saying, help, I'm a frog. But Jarvis is like, oh, look at this frog. Get out of here, frog. And he shoots him away and sweeps away the sugar without reading it.
Classic. We've seen this in, like, every cartoon ever.
Yeah.
But anyway, the thing that I want to point out about this scene is there's Mr. Fence, not important. There's a kid there that is with Jarvis, and he says, but Jarvis, there was a message written in the sugar. And Jarvis is like, yeah, like frogs can write, you fucking idiot, and sweeps it away and shoots him out the window. And this is the Marvel U, and superheroes have been in the Marvel Universe for like 30 years at this point. You're going to tell me that there's like shape-shifting aliens, and like the Avengers have gone through 10 different lineups of all these different crazy characters, and there's like the X-Men have been around forever.
And there's an Avenger called Ant-Man who controls ants, who becomes the size of an ant regularly.
Yeah, and he controls ants. You would think, and at this point there's been like 3 Ant-Men. Yeah. You would think that he would be like, oh, maybe this frog is controlled by somebody, a shapeshifter.
Well, he does say that, actually. He's like, it might be a villain frog. Get him out of here. And then he immediately dismisses it.
Yeah.
But then he goes, you've been watching too many Saturday morning cartoons, Franklin. And like, that's an insane thing that you can recognize. Maybe it's a villain. Yeah, because a villain is going to write secret messages in sugar.
Help, I'm Thor.
I was imagine a villain just sneaking in as a frog and writing, fuck you, in sugar.
That's why you're not Frog Thor or Frog Sly.
Yeah, and one thing about Frog Thor is he's frog size, but he's like an extra big frog size.
Yeah, they mention that a lot, too.
Yeah, they say, like, even though Loki can make him this mockery of a frog, they can't take away his prestige too much because he's still like a massive, beautiful-looking frog.
But he's not like a human-sized frog. He's like a frog
just
that when you saw, you'd be like, wow, that's a big-ass frog.
And when he jumps into the Avengers Mansion, he jumps between the electric I-beams through the window into the kitchen, and they're like, yeah, it's an impressive jump for a regular frog, but I'm an enchanted frog, so
yes.
Like, it's okay.
So after the Jarvis shoots out Frog Thor, Frog Thor's like, oh, like, I guess it doesn't make a difference because Avengers aren't here anyway, so I gotta just find another way to get to Asgard. But before he can think of another way, he gets attacked by a rat.
And this rat pursues him through the streets into traffic. Like, this rat wants him dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He chases him through traffic, like Phil said, and they end up in Central Park, where Frog Thor says, I may be only a frog, but still I am a warrior. Son of Odin, still I am Thor. And Thor does not run from his enemies. He fights them. And as the rat comes close, Frog Thor pumps out his chest into the little bubble that frogs make and like knocks the rat all the way back.
And then he kicks the shit out of this rat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he like really kicks the shit out of him.
And he says, have at you, vermin.
One thing, like, not only is Thor's internal, like, monologue the entire time, like, crazy, like, epic Thor speak, like Shakespearean Thor speak, but Walt Simonson's art. How do you guys feel about Simonson's art?
How would you describe it? Because like it's very, like it's not realistic. It has its own distinct style, but like I really like it. But it's hard to explain. Like it's kind of abstracted, kind of very diagonal, heavy, like very, very sharp edges.
I liked it.
Yeah, but yeah, his art is very much like the story. It's very kind of like over dramatic, and his angles are really like exciting and intense. And like this fight with the rat has like sound effects all over the place, and he's like, it is a really exciting fight for a frog just kicking a rat in the face.
And you know, I think he actually draws the frogs and the rats pretty well. Like when the frogs are all hanging out later, you can kind of tell who's who.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is insane.
Yeah, and so after Thor beats the shit out of this rat, Frog Thor says, "Thus the foes of Thor are always vanquished, and when I am finished, Loki, you shall feel like a brother to that rat."
That is such an awesome thing to say.
Yeah. And meanwhile, turns out when Thor became a frog, he had a chariot waiting nearby, and his rams.
It's part of Thor's status quo at the time. Is he has a chariot run by two like smart, aggressive like rams.
Yeah, and they're like this hassling this drunk who like walks by them, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta stop drinking, hook yuck," and he runs away.
Yeah, so stupid.
And back at Central Park, Frog Thor is by himself, wondering what he should do next.
And he also realizes a frog shouldn't be able to beat a rat up, but since when I got transformed, I was wearing my magical belt of strength. It seems like that when I transformed, those powers were imbued into me.
It's like in D&D when you wear a belt of giant strength and you are a druid and shapeshift, it still, the effect still carries on.
That's exactly what it is. He says, "I possess powers and abilities far beyond that of any mortal frog." I love that line.
I love that Thor has like a deep knowledge of the strength levels of all animals on Earth.
Yeah, this type of frog normally can't beat this type of rat, but I can.
And he is so impressive as this frog Thor that another frog shows up named Puddle Gulp, and he's like, "Wow, you're bigger and stronger than any frog I've ever seen, and you beat the shit out of that rat so easily. I wish I had more frogs like you." And he tells Frog Thor about the war in Central Park, the war that's brewing beneath our feet, between the rats and the frogs. Because the rats want to take over Central Park and kick out all the frogs and kill them all. But
is it just like Montagues and the Capulets thing? Do they just hate each other?
I think
guess so.
It's a territory thing, probably.
Like, it's just a territory thing?
Yeah, because they're trying to kick the frogs out of the reservoir. Also, they do... The rats do come back for vengeance to beat up Thor, and this frog takes him to their secret, like, underground hideout.
Not before Thor kicks the shit out of a couple of them, and one of them just goes, "Geez, who is this guy?"
Yeah, he beats the shit out of more rats to save the king.
Oh, yeah, the king. When they get back to the hideout, the Puddle Gulp, the frog he just met, says, "Who's fighting over there? It's the king's bodyguards fighting the rats." And it seems like the rats are going for the king. So Thor and Puddle Gulp jump into the fight to save the king, but alas,
they are too late to save King Glugwort.
Yeah. And it's funny because when they first meet Thor, everyone's like, "Thor, it's a stupid name. I'm Puddle Gulp. I'm Glowwork."
Well, they're frog names. He doesn't have a frog name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, Sly. Haven't you ever met a frog?
So they're like, "Oh, we have to go save the princess now because that's the king before he dies. So go save my daughter, save the kingdom, protect our people."
It's very dramatic too.
Yeah.
There's strife within the ranks too.
Yeah.
Because there's another frog. What's his name?
Bug-Eye.
Bug-Eye, yeah.
Bug-Eye. Bug-Eye wants to bone the princess and be king. But Puddle Gulp is the rightful heir to the throne or something.
And when they go tell the princess, she's like, "Oh my god, my father's dead." And Bugwort's like, "And you're still alive, Puddle Gulp? I would have given my life to save my lord."
Yeah, I love the frog court is like so great. How much they really play it up like this is a real kingdom, and the king was slain. Now who's the throne going to go to?
I mean, it's an obvious parallel to what's going on in Asgard right now.
That's what I like that a lot.
Which is such a ridiculous sentence to say.
That's why I was saying earlier how it's like it really is like this comic is two storylines and they are really parallels to each other. where you have the Frog Kingdom and then the kingdom in Asgard. The king is gone in both.
Now, when I first read this, I took it as like kind of, I might be being super overdramatic and pedantic here.
Unlike Thor.
Yeah, that like humans to Asgardians are just like these animals that are like so uncivilized, and yet to us, frogs are the same way, yet they're going through the same struggles that our gods are going through.
That's a pretty good...
Wow, the story's fucking deep.
You know what I mean?
That's a pretty good... That's pretty good.
Like, the Asgardians look at human politics as like, oh, that's you know, LOL, they're like children. And we look at animals like they're animals. Yet these animals are going through this complicated war and power struggle of their own. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's actually... I think that's a good analysis.
Yeah. Actually, I think... And I do think that's some elements of that there. Because there's like a Game of Thrones thing going on here.
Game of Frog. Game of Croaks.
Really? Not Game of Toads?
Oh, that's good.
That's better.
That's good.
I wish we could make the intro just the Game of Thrones theme song with frogs ripping.
I bet you can find it.
I bet you can make that happen.
If I can, that will be a theme song.
Go find some frogs.
But,
no, we're going to turn Sly into a frog, and then he'll ribbit this for us.
They also, one thing I want to point out is the frogs, the Bubble whatever, no, what is it, Bug-Eye? Bug-Eye is like, we can't trust this outsider Frog Thor, and they're like, no, he is an answer to our prayers. He is he is a warrior sent from the gods. I'm like, I mean, kinda,
yeah.
He is that.
And he keeps saying, I want to leave, but then they're like, well, our kingdom is doomed without you. You must be here to save us. And Thor keeps thinking, shit, like, I want to leave, but these people need me.
He says, how shall I weigh the lives of those under my protection against the potential tyranny in my homeland?
And the reason why I came to the conclusion of that like grandiose metaphor is because I've read a lot of Thor, and this is the exact same way Thor talks about humans on Earth. That he's like, I need to protect these people. They rely on me. And he views frogs the exact same way he views human beings, which I think is kind of like a really cool thing for a god to do. And it really shows like Thor's nobility, that he doesn't care who you are. Even if you're a frog, he's still gonna like fight for you.
Yeah, because they showed him sanctuary. He says, like, these people took me in and protected me from the rats. I owe them now. They hosted me, and I owe them now what I can do for them.
Yeah. And it's funny how well this sums up Thor's nobility and character. That if you are noble, he will always fight for you.
So as they're debating these politics, another frog shows up and reveals that the rats are planning to dump rat poison that's been placed around the park and use it to poison the reservoir that the frogs are using to drink from. And basically, this also aids Thor's decision, because not only are they going to poison all the frogs, but they might poison people that are drinking from Central Park, I guess.
Well,
it all goes into like the water.
Yeah,
supply.
in the ground too.
Yeah.
Like it's not good for the environment to have rat poison in
the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should also mention before, when they're describing the hierarchy of this kingdom, they also mentioned there's dragons in the sewers.
Oh, yeah.
And Thor decides,
yes,
while the rats are being confronted by the frogs, he will go find these alligators. Finding these dragons, spoilers, the alligators.
Sly, yeah.
I'm bad at this.
But by bringing up dragons and everything, everything about this is so grandiose.
Yeah.
And they talk about a tale how the frogs went to go scout out the dragons underneath in this tunnel, and they never returned. And how it's like this place that no one, not the rats nor the frogs go, because no one returns alive.
But one is brave enough to traverse the dragon lair, and that one is Thor.
So meanwhile, as this epic story is happening, this very mundane story in Asgard's happening, where everything's all father thing, and Loki's like, oh, now that Thor's gone, I'm going to be king. Yuck, yuck. And Heimdall's like, I can't let this happen. I know Loki's behind Thor's disappearance. Heimdall's the guy in the movies played by Idris Elba. He has like eyes that can see everything.
He's like the sentinel of Asgard. He watches over Asgard.
Yeah.
He can see everything, but like not a lot of things actually. There's a fly. I don't see it.
Well, yeah.
Loki gives this huge speech about how like, I'm the next in line. I'm also Odin's son. So Thor's not here. He's like taking a shit or something. So I guess I'm king.
Yeah. But Heimdall's like, oh, I know something's up, and he starts plotting something a way to keep Loki from the throne.
So he uses little kids to go to enact this plan, and he says, "Go find the Warriors 3, little kids."
Yeah.
And also we missed something earlier. He's like, the little kids also scout this giant sword in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, the Sword of Surtur. I don't know what that is, Ryan.
We don't have to talk about that. It's a big overarching plot.
They find a big sword, and the sword is invisible unless you're really close to it. So they're like, "What? A cloak of invisibility? Who tricks people and puts invisibility on stuff? That's really weird." And then they come back and they tell Heimdall about it.
Yeah, but the issue ends with Thor entering the sewers,
dragging rats with him,
a bunch of rat corpses.
He beats up all these rats, and then he starts making a trail into the sewers with their bodies. He's dragging them by their tails. And spoilers, we already knew this, but the dragons are actually alligators. The fables of New York City are true. What fables? Do people think there are alligators in the sewers?
Yeah, no, that's a thing.
Yeah, that's very much a thing. You never heard those rumors in the 80s and 90s?
Phil, you grew up in the city.
Yeah, there are obviously no alligators there.
That's why it's a fable. But anyway.
Silence. As Phil contemplates his life.
I was like, what?
He didn't say the factually peer-reviewed reports are true.
But so it turns out not only are there alligators in the sewers, they're being controlled by a Pied Piper, a guy with a flute that's just controlling all the alligators. And now he turns to Thor and says, "That's a weird frog," and turns to Thor and plays his flute and starts controlling Thor's mind as well. And the issue ends
with Thor jumping into the mouths of the dragons.
Yeah, and the preview for next issue says, "Next issue, guess who's coming to dinner?" Or, "It's not easy being green."
I love that. Chrissy was actually telling me you have to make an "It's not easy being green" joke, and I was like, "Oh shit, this comic already did it."
And it also says, "With apologies to the movies and the Muppets."
Yeah. So one thing that I do want to point out about this flute player, this might seem like a ridiculous thing that there's just this like Pied Piper figure in the sewers, and it is a ridiculous thing. The reason why he's here is because he's a Morlock, which is a type of mutant that lives in the sewers, and I think the only reason he's in this is because
we'll get into that. We'll get to that near the end.
Do we have to?
I want to get that from my recommendations, so I'll explain. So you fucking don't dare spoil my fucking shit.
Okay.
Shut your mouth.
Okay, I didn't know you were
Ryan.
gonna recommend. Okay, but there's a reason why there's a Pied Piper guy here.
So this Pied Piper is a Morlock, a mutant who lives in the sewers, and he starts playing music to control Thor, and Thor's like, "No one controls me," and he starts beating the shit out of this fucking Pied Piper and knocks.
I love that.
He's like, "Oh, he's trying to get me to jump over to him. I'll jump over to him," and jumps into his face, and it makes a giant splat noise.
Yeah, and he knocks the flute out of his hand, and Frog Thor steals the flute from the guy with his mouth. And now about the flute to control him, the alligators go crazy and start going after the Pied Piper. The Pied Piper's like, "Oh fuck!" and just starts climbing out of the sewers.
I love too here how every time Thor fights in this whole 3-issue series, he always has to say, "If I was a regular frog, this wouldn't work. But I am the son of Odin. Like I am not an ordinary amphibian."
Thor does that all the time too. Like those tricks might work on a regular mortal, but I am the son of Odin, the hair of the all thing.
He always does that.
That's great.
Well, probably because his continuity is so confusing with like who's Don Blake and who's Thor. He has to keep reminding himself who he is.
And then we have this great scene transition where it goes back to the Central Park Reservoir above ground, and an army of rats slink through the brush with hatred in their eyes and murder in their hearts.
We should also clarify. There's a lot of.
Oh, it does say that. I thought that was your joke.
Yeah,
that's the narration.
There's a lot of purple prose in like the narration boxes and stuff. Like, it's not only are the characters talking in this grandiose way. There's a omniscient narrator talking in a grandiose way too.
Yeah, they really try to make it like this war is actually like an epic struggle.
Yeah. So meanwhile, back on Asgard.
Oh wait, before this,
Dragon.
the rats are the frogs had sprung a trap.
Yeah, they go into a lot of this war stuff. They're like the one rat will say like the king will be like, Wallstone group, you head over there and dump the poison, and then they get ambushed and they're like, we need to reinforce the band. And they act like this is like an actual like army with ranks and everything.
Yeah, but then the frogs are like, come on, fellows, let's take them like the Steelers took the Rams in Super Bowl 14. What?
They explain that, though. It's Puddle Gulp who says that, and we find out a secret about it.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, this book has good continuity.
Shit, you're right.
But, so back on Asgard, Thor shows up. And Loki's like, what the fuck? You're supposed to be a frog.
So yeah, Thor shows up and he's like, Loki, you can't be king.
At the last second, too, because they're saying, this is the third chance, Thor, if you're here, we're going to give away the throne without you. And then he's like, hey, I'm here. Yeah. It's like you have like three strikes and you're out. And at the last second, he shows up and he's like, hey, Loki, I'm here. And Loki's like, what the fuck? He's supposed to be a frog.
Yeah. And it turns out the Heimdall...
Can spoil again?
The fuck? Okay, fuck.
Well, basically Thor says, like, I sustained all these injuries in that battle in Hell. Can we wait a couple days to do this? Like, let's do this tomorrow, and then we'll figure out who's king then. And Heimdall, come take a walk with me, and we'll discuss.
And Loki turns into a fly, which Heimdall can't see with his all-seeing eyes.
No, he can see.
I don't think he does see it, because he's like, something seems weird, but I don't know.
Yeah.
He says they're only the ordinary sounds of nature about. But even then, I don't even think it matters, because he flies into his room, and Heimdall's like, we're going to go into a second room, and I'm going to set up this magical barrier, so even if there are any spies in here, you can't come in.
Any creature, great or small, can, if they attempt to pass this barrier, the blade will hum.
Yeah.
And what's funny, too, is like, they do this whole precaution to not get caught, and then when they're done talking, they walk out of the room talking about the secret. They're like, hey, so since you're not Thor...
That is true. I didn't think about that.
So we have Fly Loki and Frog Thor.
Yeah.
And then we have Fox of Iron Man shows up.
Wait, what? Oh, as a joke. I'm sorry.
Are you referencing any of the characters from the Spider-Ham universe? Because that's a thing that exists.
I didn't know.
Like Baron Zebra?
And Dr. Catopus, the Puss of Nine Tails.
Octopus is already an animal, guys. You fucked this one up. But yeah, there is an alternate universe where it's all animals and like Spider-Man is a pig.
That's pretty
Spider-Ham. He's Peter Porker.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Yeah, really.
So when Phil said Fox Iron Man, like I was like, oh, I didn't know he was in the story.
Yeah, like that's the thing.
See, that's the thing about comics, like Flashpoint. When I was like, yeah, what if Flash run back in time, punch his mom in the face? You're like, well, like, kinda. It's you can always say dumb shit, and it probably happened in a comic.
Yeah.
But we come back to
the exciting part of the story, the frogs.
Yeah, and back to Central Park while Fly Loki's following Heimdall and this other Thor, and back on Central Park, the rats are getting the advantage and the frogs are fleeing, and the rats are like, oh, they're fleeing, we're winning, but then it turns out the frogs are fleeing because alligators have shown up. Thanks to
that trail of dead rats that Thor left was actually a bait trail for the alligators to show up to the fight.
Yeah.
And these rats apparently have pretty big ambitions, because they say, once we spread out and beat the frogs, we're going to take every park in the city, we'll take the streets, we'll take the buildings, we'll take New York. And that's what the alligators
I would really like a what-if issue of Marvel where it's like, what if Thor Frog didn't exist and the rats took over the world?
These alligators just like they massacre they start killing all the rats, and you see Frog Thor in the distance watching from above as you hear rips and roars and snarls.
A large frog watches the scene below him impassively as he sees the fruits of his labors ripen before his eyes.
But yeah, this is their Red Wedding. This will go down in history for them. And Frog Thor is just watching all this when he gets attacked by the Piper who wants his flute back.
Yeah.
And we come back to Fly Loki, who turns back into regular Loki because the Heimdall's an idiot and left the fake Thor's hammer outside the protective barrier.
But how would Heimdall have picked it up to move it if he thought it was the real hammer? He wouldn't have been able to.
Thor could have picked it up, and Thor's right next to him.
That's true. Heimdall sees everything. That doesn't make him smart about it. He doesn't have, like, inference
Yeah,
skills.
I noticed that.
He's pure observation.
I can see and hear everything. I don't know what any of it means.
Yeah.
I hear noises, and I'm like, there's a lot of noises happening. I'm not really sure.
But Loki's goes picks up the hammer and is like, wait, I can pick up this hammer. I got an idea. And as Phil said, Heimdall and other Thor walk out of the room explaining their plans. Like, oh, it's a good thing I'm fake Thor. And it turns out fake Thor is a guy that impersonated Thor in the past, and now he's impersonating Thor again.
And then he says it so that Fly Loki hears it, and we see Fly Loki perform some kind of spell on the hammer.
Yeah,
we don't know what it is, but
yes,
something is amiss.
Yeah, and we come back to Central Park, and the Piper's like, "You're a weird frog," and he explains that I'm more like a mutant from the sewers, and like being down in the sewers, I know rats are pieces of shit, and I like frogs better, so I'm going to go side of them and let the alligators eat all the rats.
Yeah, he's so brutal. He plays his flute and leads the rats to hell, really. He forces the rats to march down into the alligator-infested sewers.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention this before. Before the Piper takes all the alligators away, Thor is watching them massacre everyone. He's like, I really hope someone calls the police to handle these alligators, because I can't just leave them here. But I'm just a frog. I can't do shit about it.
So then the frogs have won, and Frog Thor... it's like, oh, once again, the freedom of the waters is yours. And everyone's like, we need a new king! Thor, be our king! And the Princess Frog is like, would you stay, Thor, and rule the frogs with me? I would like it very much. And she has little cute hearts over her head. So Thor's like, should I do what Loki did, turn to an animal and get pregnant? And he's like, no, I gotta go to Asgard.
And he even talks to these people, like he talks to the queen or the princess, like, Lady Queen, you do me a great honor, but I have already tarried overlong amongst you, and I must be gone.
Do you notice even the way we discuss them? Once we called them frogs, and now we call them people.
And the story actually anthropomorphizes them pretty well.
Yeah.
Like, I actually cared more about the frog story than the Asgard story for most of this.
That's really funny.
Oh yeah. Well, the Asgard story is part of like the bigger narrative, so it's much more of, you only really see the parallelism, and like who could, if you're just reading this in isolation, who could give a shit about Asgard politics?
The frogs are like, these are gonna give it poison tonight. Like the rat poison's gonna kill them all.
Yeah. But Thor gives his grandiose speech saying, "Remember, we fought together and won against enormous odds. And my heart shall be glad to think of the faith you had and the stranger you came to your aid. Give that faith to your queen, and remember, it can move mountains, they say." And he hops off. And I just want to point out, after Frog Thor rejects the princess, she looks devastated, like she's crying. And
yeah, she looks really sad.
Look at how big he is. He's like double the size that everybody else. She wants that.
And then Puddle Gulp jumps after Thor, and he's like, "Hey, wait!" And he's like, another football reference, and he's like, "We're actually pretty similar, you know, and I think I know who you are." And he's like, "How could a frog know who Thor is? You're a fucking frog." And he's like, you know, I was actually
How did he see through my disguise of using the same name?
But he's like, I was actually a man once, and you know, I got on the wrong side of a fortune teller. She turned me into a frog, and then, you know, I kind of liked being a frog. I didn't get mugged or have income taxes, same thing. And, you know, just being a frog's okay.
All I really miss is football. Now I just have to make sure I don't kiss any pretty girls.
But yes, so Thor leaves, says goodbye to Puddlegulp, and Frog Thor returns to his rams, and the rams are like, "Welcome back, my lord."
Hey, Thor. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Frog Thor?
So now Thor Frogs finds the hammer, Mjolnir, meow meow, whatever. And the inscription appears: "Whoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor." And he like gets in position to lift it. And I love this scene like a lot.
Yeah.
He's trying to lift it as like an army of rats are coming after him
for revenge.
And
the ones that survive, they're like, they want revenge because they're like, he's the one who killed all our people, and they're trying to basically jump Thor in this alley. Well, he's struggling as a frog to lift Mjolnir.
Yeah.
But he's like, I am worthy, even though I'm a frog, so I gotta
do
this.
So he's under the hammer trying to lift it up, and just, my back feels as though it is beginning to break, but I dare not give up. My head spins, everything is beginning to whirl around. I cannot hold on. Rise up, you sluggard, though the agony be unbearable. You spoke glibly of the faith that moves mountains when there were no mountains to be moved. Where now is that vaunted courage, as you struggle beneath the hammer you once held in countless battles? Shall Loki at long last have the final laugh? It rises, the hammer rises! Now is the moment when I must grasp Mjolnir's handle. Father Odin, wherever you are, hear a warrior's plea and grant thy son his birthright. And then a huge bolt of lightning and a giant crackle of thunder.
Crack-a-doom!
'Tis done, once more the power of the god of thunder is mine, and woe to Loki that it should be so. And you now have a human-sized, full battle armor holding the hammer Frog Thor.
Yeah, I thought he would turn into a human here, but no, he is just a giant frog in Thor's clothes.
He's a 6 foot tall frog in Thor's clothes.
Because like what happened was, Thor's hammer, if anyone's worthy of lifting it, they can lift it and they get the power of Thor. So what happened here was, it wasn't undoing the spell, it was giving him the power of Thor. And since he is Thor, he's naturally able to be worthy of it.
Because earlier, the same thing happened with Beta Ray Bill. Where Beta Ray Bill wasn't a horse face man. He looked kind of like a regular...
horse face man.
No, he was an alien. He didn't have a horse face. And then for some reason, when he got the hammer, it made him this like epic, scary warrior with all of Thor's powers. So like there is grounding for this kind of thing to happen in this run already.
So,
you know.
The issue ends.
So then before the issue ends, giant Frog Thor jumps in the chariot and rides for Asgard. And the alcoholic guy is still there, and he's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, this time I'm giving up booze for sure.
And we get to issue 366, the final part of the story. The cover shows Frog Thor fighting Loki, and the title on the cover says, "What do you call a 6'6" fighting mad frog? Answer inside." And the title of the story is called Sir. You could tell they're having fun with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Frog Thor is riding his chariot with the two rams towards Asgard.
Apparently there's the bridge between Midgard, the human realm, and Asgard is like broken, so if you want to get between one and the other, you have to like ride through a cosmic storm for a few days.
Yeah.
So he's like struggling with his rams to get through this storm.
Yeah. And just to get into backstory of what happened in Asgard, Wonder Warriors 3, Volstagg, in the movies he's played by the guy who played the Punisher, which is very perfect casting because Volstagg's like a fat, dopey guy. And he's played by the Punisher in the movies. But Volstagg, like I said, he's a big, dopey, fat guy. And he's like a bumbling doof. And the only way he beats anyone is by like...
Wait, can you just keep describing him? Because all the words you picked are amazing.
But like basically the only reason like Volstagg ever wins fights is because he like bumps into random people and like, oops, like... You know, like, he's not winning because he's a good fighter. He's winning because he's like an idiot and, like, making people hit each other.
Yeah. He's also one of the best Thor characters, though. Like, he's awesome.
Yeah. But the funny thing about Volstagg is he always brags, like, I'm the greatest. I'm Muhammad Ali. I'm the greatest ever was. Thor's a pussy. Thor's a bitch. But
he's a bum.
He's the kind of person that, like, falls, like, his chair breaks and he gets knocked out. And then at the very end of the fight, he wakes up and he's like, yeah, now you're running away from the might of Volstagg.
Yeah. But the one thing that's charming about Volstagg is he's a good father figure. Like, he has a big family. And what happens is his daughter was the one that was sent to go find the sword of Surtur. And now she got sick being near that sword.
Apparently all the kids who found it are getting sick now.
Yeah, and Volstagg's like, I'm sick of waiting. I'm not going to sit here. My daughter is sick and dying. I'm going to go find the sword, and I'm going to show a piece of my mind. And
go yell at a sword.
And as this is happening, Loki is talking with Thor and saying, everyone thinks Thor should be...
in front of, like, a whole stadium of Asgardians. Yeah. It's now, like, the all thing again.
Yeah, everyone thinks Thor is naturally the best leader. But you know what? I did all this cool shit. Who stood alone between fiery Surtur's anger and the eternal flame? Who braved the fury of the ancient wrath and fought against the burning doom of all that lived?
Yeah, this is all stuff that happened in the previous arc.
And everyone's like, Loki's a good leader. And Loki's like the final nail and proving him a good leader. He goes to fake Thor and grabs the fake Thor's hammer and says, look, bitches, I could pick up Thor's hammer. I'm worthy too. What now, motherfuckers?
And people are like, wow, he really is just so cool.
And Heimdall's like, oh shit, we fucked up.
Yeah. And Loki just chucks the hammer into space.
Well, because he put a spell on it, and he's like, it's going to come back, and that's going to show that I actually have command over this hammer. Yeah. So he throws it, and he's like, methinks it's taking a long time to come back.
Methinks the hammer doth protest so much. Because the hammer doth protest so much because then it doesn't come back. Instead, giant Frog Thor comes up, and what the Asgardians see is Loki's showing his display of him being worthy, throwing the hammer away and being back. In the middle of it, a fucking giant frog monster dressed as Thor picks Loki up and kidnaps him.
Yeah.
And flies away.
And flies away.
And everyone's like, what the fuck? After that fucking monster is kidnapping our fucking people.
And Heimdall's like, shit, I gotta get there first. Yeah. So all of Asgard basically mounts up and just starts riding off into the distance to see where this frog beast took Loki. Because they were kind of starting to get on Loki's side here. They're like, yeah, he is a good leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Thor and Loki start fighting, and Thor says, now, Loki, the time of reckoning is at hand. And Loki's like, Frog Thor can speak. And why not, trickster? I carry the hammer that has been given a humble frog the power of Thor, and Thor is not a mute. Perhaps now, perhaps not, but how priceless this is the sound of his croaking... Oh, sorry. Perhaps not, but how priceless is the sound of his croaking voice to Loki's ears.
Sly just learned how to read. To all our listeners, we should be proud of him. So
yeah, round of applause for Sly.
Yeah, well, it's pretty good for your reading level. It's pretty good.
but like, Loki's just taunting Thor as Thor's like, give me my fucking human form back, and Loki's like, are you sure you should be called Thor? Because like, it shouldn't be called you Frog of Thunder instead. And Loki's like, fuck you, and he starts smashing the fucking ground with his hammer.
He beats the shit out of Loki here, and he's like, Loki's trying to shoot spells at him, and he's just knocking them away because he's like Thor. So he's like, I don't care.
Yeah, he's hitting them away with his hammer like he's the fucking Fars Temple boss in Ocarina of Time.
But as he's hitting with his, as Loki is like keeping it at bay, he says, I'm going to cast a spell on you to turn your mind into the mind of a frog too, because that's only appropriate. And then once your frog mind is equal to your frog body, then no one will know what's the truth behind you, and I fucking win. But it turns out, oh shit, I fucked up, because as he becomes more and more of an animal, he just becomes more and more rampaging, just starts fucking shit up, smashing everything. And Loki's like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Shouldn't he have originally turned him into frog mind as well? You put Thor in a frog body, he's gonna try and fuck you up.
But the thing is, Loki didn't want to like kill him. He just wanted to keep him away for a few days so he could become king. And right. Loki does shit like this all the time where he doesn't want to kill Thor. He just wants to fuck with him. And if he just turned him into a frog with a frog mind, Thor wouldn't like be annoyed by that. He would just be a frog.
So we go back to Volstagg, who's like, he made it back to the sword, and he's like, wow, that was a big hike. And then he's like, oh man, I'm getting so tired being near the sword. It must be some spell that's draining energy. And he's like, let me just lean on this rock for a second. And the rocks tumble down and smash the sword and the machine and everything. Everything just explodes. And it's like, oh wow, okay, the spell's broken. He feels better. His daughter feels better. And Thor becomes Thor again.
Yeah.
Because I think I don't know the whole backstory, but I believe Surtur's sword is what was giving Loki's enhanced powers enough to...
Right, because Thor actually says in the first issue here, how could he cast a spell from so far away that's so powerful?
Yeah.
And the answer is he's using a magic sword to power his energy.
So now Thor is Thor again, and Loki's like, oh, how are you going to prove what I did, Thor? Fuck you, I win.
No one's going to believe you that you were a big frog demon. Because when he flew in and left, all of Asgard was like, what the fuck was that giant demon that just abducted who's about to be our king? To war!
It's a good point.
Yeah. But then Loki's like, oh, I am great. I am Loki. Will you trust me again? And then Thor throws his actual hammer into Loki's hands. And since it's the actual hammer, Loki can't lift it, and he just falls to the ground.
Loki catches a hammer and just gets fucking knocked out by it.
And this is as soon as the Asgardian army voters show up. So they see this, and they're like, we wanted Loki. But all of a sudden, he just gets obliterated by this hammer. And Thor covers for his brother, and he's like, yeah, he's a good guy. Don't make fun of him.
And this is why I hate Thor and Loki, by the way, because I know this will hurt Ryan's feelings, but
not gonna hurt my feelings.
Cry, you little bitch.
But like, maybe I'm biased because I've only read a little bit of Thor, and I mostly read Loki through his appearances in Hulk, his appearances in Silver Surfer, his appearances in X-Men, and what Loki does, he fucking ruins people's lives, just fucking with them. And Thor is like, I'm just going, oh, it's fucking Loki with his jest. I'm going to bail him out every time. Loki's a fucking monster, and that's why I love the movies, because they rightly put him in jail and say, you're a fucking monster.
Well, okay. In the 60s, yes. And the 70s, and even in the 80s, yes. Modern comics have done a lot more with Loki and told a much more compelling story than just the, like, nah, he's probably pretty good now. So, like, I will give it to you up to this point.
Yeah, I not knowing very much about Loki and Thor, all I saw in this story arc was that, I mean, I know Loki's a villain, and he was a big piece of shit here. And then at the end, when he didn't even, it's not like they were trying to kill him. They were making fun of him.
Yeah.
And Thor's like, don't make fun of my brother.
Yeah. Like, he bails his brother out saying the frog demon made him possess him or something and made him no longer be able to control the hammer.
Thor says the creature was dank.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
He was dank, and Loki's been contaminated by its very touch.
Oh, wait. Was he saying that the creature was a dank meme? Was the frog that boy?
Yeah.
Oh, that boy!
Oh, yeah.
Was Loki just like, oh shit, what up?
Well, yeah, Frog Thor was a rare Pepe, and, then there's just a lot of dank memes involved, and then he lost his ability to lift Mjolnir, so he bails him out.
Yeah.
And he says, don't be too mean to him, but I am number one.
But if you want to read actual Loki, read Journey into Mystery, you fucking plebs, because it's the best thing ever. It's the best thing Marvel ever published.
Hey, save it for the recommendation.
That's not what I'm recommending.
Well, now you have to recommend that.
Because that book's shit. I only recommend it to you guys because you guys have shit taste. You should read it.
No. Fuck you.
But yeah, I have read a little bit of Modern Thor, and Loki's a lot better, but I always found it annoying how, man, Thor bails him out so many times, even though he's such a piece of shit.
Well, that's one of the things that, like, I think they do that a lot in the movies, too, that they show well, is that, like, Thor still has this sense of, like, he's my brother. Even though he's an asshole, like, I'm still gonna side with him more often than I should and give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, Thor 2 does that a lot.
But that's why I love those movies, and that's why my favorite Thor Loki line in any Thor Loki medium is in Thor 2, when Thor...
Wait, I didn't see
No,
Thor
but it's
2.
not spoilers. But
I'm just kidding. I don't know if I did. Whatever.
but there's a scene where Thor and Loki are joking together, and they're laughing, saying, oh, remember when we were kids, fucking with our mom, fucking with this? And they're laughing, and Thor puts his hand on Loki's shoulder, and Thor's like, God, I wish I could trust you. And that's how Thor should be. He should be like, I really want to trust you, but I'm not stupid enough to trust you, instead of being like here, where he is stupid enough to trust Loki.
Comic Thor is pretty stupid, in general.
Like the comic Heimdall, too.
Yeah. Like, Modern Thor, like, from JMS's relaunch on, it goes into a lot more details, and it's grounded a lot in Simonson's work, but they elaborate on Loki a lot more. So if you're as annoyed with that kind of Loki, Modern Thor's way better.
So Thor bails Loki out, and this whole thing was set up because, like, we have to pick a leader now. Let's pick a leader now. It's fucking 3 days. Come on, hurry up. Chop, chop. And even after all that, Thor says, I don't want to be your leader. You should be this guy that's not even here. And we have to go look for him now.
Yeah, it's so stupid because Loki, his whole plan was have Thor not be here. And then they're like, Thor, you're going to be our king. And he's like, wait, what? No, I'm not. I got things to do. I gotta go be the Avengers or something. So let's go find Balder the Brave. He's pretty brave, right?
His name's Balder the Brave.
One thing I do want to point out is earlier in the story, they do also mention, they're like, where's Balder? He's missing too. He had his own miniseries at the time, also written by Simonson, which had just ended. And Thor knew where he was and nobody else did. So they thought he was just like missing. Thor now knows where to go to get him. So it's not easy to get that from this story, but in the context of the bigger picture, it does make a lot more sense.
We'll take your word on it, Ryan.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind is, like, stories back in the 80s weren't necessarily meant to be read in isolation. Like, they didn't expect people to just read Frog Thor.
You can tell because this whole comic has constant, like, asterisks where they're like, Thor issue 360, or if you've been reading Balder the Brave's miniseries or whatever.
So comics has a constant asterisk in for the vowels because it's so many cursing in here.
Yeah, we did cut out some stuff that was going on with, like, Hela and all this stuff because it's super unimportant.
I did. To me, I was like, is this character going to come back? They never did. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Especially when we read older comics and they're in the middle of a run, you do get a lot of that. Well, that's the end of it, right?
Yeah, it ends with they're going to find Balder the Brave.
And they say, the king is dead, long live the king.
Yeah.
Or it's the other way around, in parentheses. and that ends Frog Thor or Thor Croaks or Sir, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I want to call
So, final recap page.
So, Phil, was this good, bad, or bad, bad?
I think this was good.
Yes.
I think, like, it's a very enjoyable read. The fact that they knew it was tongue-in-cheek the whole time makes it acceptable to be stupid. And I think when stories take themselves really seriously, but they do ridiculous things, that's when it can be hard to be okay with it. But since this story was very obviously like, we know how silly it is that the frogs are at war with the rats in Central Park, but just go with it and it'll be cool. If you can go with it, I think it's a cool story.
Yeah, I especially like it in context because Simonson's run is so dramatic and like giant picture that having him be like, he's rebuilding Thor as a brand and getting people to trust the character after like kind of a lackluster few years. Having him be willing to take that chance of be like really silly to give everyone a break from the grandiose politic of it is, I respect it a lot that he pulls it off, and that like it's just a fun story that even standalone works.
It's kind of interesting because this has this and the Thor film are kind of similar in that they both have tropes that I absolutely always hated. Thor film was a trope that has a trope of.
Are you going to complain about the Dutch angles, Sly?
No, not Dutch angles. But I hate that trope or gimmick of a medieval character end up in modern times and be like, "What's all this newfangled technology? Oh, come here, maid, and give me your tidings or whatever." And I always find that lame. But the Thor film executed really well, and I really like that movie. And this is another trope I always hated my whole entire life. This is why one of the reasons I hate the Silver Age. And
Sly came out of the womb and he's like, "Fuck this trope."
Yeah.
My whole entire life,
but like,
I hated this.
This is why I'm glad we didn't do that fucking bullshit cat story with Joe, because fuck that fucking story. We're suing because of fucking cat.
I can't believe you're still so mad about it.
No, I'm not, but I just want to bring it up because it's funny. But I do hate that trope. That's why I hate the Silver Age, because they have this thing where a character will be turned into a fucking cat or a fucking frog or whatever for an entire issue. And even when I was a kid, I hated it. Like, this is not like adult Sly thinking it's stupid. Like, when I was a kid, when I read like or watched cartoon shows and the cartoon episodes about like Beastmaster being shrunk down or something silly like that, I'm like, oh, this is lame because I like seeing this character be cool. I want to see him be cool. I don't want to see him dealing with this fucking goofy bullshit the entire episode. You know what I mean?
I guess. I like goofy stuff.
Like why does Goku have to learn to drive, right?
No, but I guess Goku's a good example. Like I want to see Goku fight Cell. I don't want to see Goku fucking learn to drive. Like,
yeah, no, I know. I was being serious with that. Like, goofy side plots can put a damper on the story when you're like, I actually want to see what they normally do.
Yeah.
Like, you don't watch 24 to watch Jack Bauer like cook a meal.
Yeah.
You're like, you want to see him fight terrorists.
And like Thor, I want to see Thor fight fucking Loki. I want to see him fight deities and stuff. But this story, the fact that I like the story shows how good it is. Just like the movie, the Thor movie. The fact that it's a trope I hate, but the fact it does it so well, it's such a good joke of it. It shows how well the execution is, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it makes you like give a shit about these rats and frogs, which is like.
And that's a good reason why I like it, because it has actual story behind it. It's not just goofy shifter type issues. Like, it has a fucking frog kingdom being developed here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll always miss Puddle Gulp and Bug-Eye. Yeah. Because even Bug-Eye near the end comes around and he's like, Thor has to be our leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, letters.
Yeah, we have a letter. And just as a reminder, it's Divisive Issues on Gmail, Twitter, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, rate, review, all that stuff. It's great. I'm not going to read through all the usernames again because they're the same. I've been doing this every week and I don't know why. It's always the same. So this comes from Brian via Gmail.
Who's that?
Excellent, Brian.
Yeah. He's the one who likes listening to us talk the most. So he asks, what does it take to make you care about the protagonist of a story? And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because we were talking about like how much like we care about Puddle Gulp, and like he's a frog who likes football. That's we shouldn't care about him, but we do. So, and I know he's not the protagonist, but what does it take to make you care about the protagonist?
Here's something I recently learned about my
body.
But like my opinion, then I feel this is something that's true for most audiences, because this is why I think the Marvel films are so successful, and why films like Batman v Superman have more polarized views. I think you can't underestimate the good faith you get from a character when that character makes you laugh, and I think that's why we were able to easily get into these characters, because they were able to make us laugh. Like when a character has some charm and humor to him, they become more personable rather than just a guy in a story. Like Thor is a good example of that, because the Thor film, I'm gonna keep talking about the Thor film every fucking time, but the Thor film is such a...
Sly actually got a job as a Marvel salesman, so he's trying to just pitch Thor 3 to us.
No, but like the Thor film is such a perfect example, because Thor was a character I had trouble getting into, because every time I read random Thor issues, it was always Thor speaking this grandiose way, and I'm like, he's just a grandiose character, and talking these big words, and like I find it hard to relate to. I find it hard to get into that.
Sly don't like them big words.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Big fancy words trying to confuse all me. But I'm just trying to learn to read here, and they're trying to use these big words on me. But Thor is a good example, because I felt when the Thor film's coming out, like I felt. I got more into Thor as I got into the books, but I feel that barrier is going to be there for new readers too. He's going to be like this unrelatable god character, like how the audience is going to get into this character. But by making Thor a funny character, a character we find humor in his inability to relate to everyday things, that another smashing glass to the ground, that made the audiences laugh, and that made Thor very likable, very personable. And I think that's very important for any protagonist.
One last thing I want to say about the Thor movie before I give my answer is this is actually a very rare thing that happens in the context of the show. Is before, when the Thor movie came out, I hadn't really read any like of the Avengers Marvel characters yet, and I had no interest in Thor at all. I was like, he sounds really powerful, like I don't care at all. And Phil was actually the one who saw the movie first and was like, you should see it, it's really great. And which is so backwards as usual that Phil is actually the one who got me to give a shit about Thor.
I mean, that movie made me give a shit about Thor too, because like Sly was saying...
Wait, it made you give a shit about Thor 2? You were excited for the sequel?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I haven't seen Thor 2.
Or maybe you have, you don't know.
But I think Sly brought up a really good point with you guys both talking about the Thor movie. Like, the humor really makes people like characters. And you can even take a show like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and like, these people you should not like, actually. But because they're funny, you don't like empathize with them, but you like to see them.
You enjoy spending time with them.
It's like in real life where you have people that are in life that are assholes, like they're bad human beings, but they joke and they make funny jokes, and you
like us.
Yeah, like we're piece of shit.
But I think Brian's question, like, what makes you like a protagonist? That's what it was.
What makes you care about a protagonist?
And I think for me, the humor's not enough because you have like, they have to be relatable to me, and they have to be relatable in more than just they're funny, and they have to be more than just like, oh, I can see how this is like a person, like they're like a real. They're genuine, but I need to kind of have like similar-ish values or beliefs with them. Like, take a show like The Wire, an amazing show, but for a long time, I didn't like any of the characters in that show because they're pieces of shit, like real people are. But it's hard for me to like them as characters, even though I like the show, because I'm like, you're kind of a bad person, though. I don't really want good things to happen to you because you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, I like them as characters for the story, but I don't know if I care if they like have a good life.
That's actually two different elements of a good character. Like my thing is whether you like a character, well, your thing is whether it's a well-written character but maybe not likable.
Right, and I think you can have some really characters I really don't care about. Like, I don't want them to succeed, but they are very interesting to watch. A guy's Baltar, maybe, of Battlestar Galactica. You're like, you're terrible, but I just can't stop watching you.
Yeah.
For me, the thing that makes me really care about a character is, I totally agree with everything you guys said, but I also look at it a little more, like, bigger picture, I guess, where I think, what do they represent? Not only, like, as, a representation of what type of humanity they're representing, but also, like, in the context of the story. And, like, one thing that I think has some of the best characters is A Song of Ice and Fire, or Game of Thrones, where there are characters in that series that I do not like. Like, there are certain characters that I have never hated characters as much as I have hated them, but I will defend that they are some of the best characters that, like, I love them as characters, but I despise them because even though, like, because I look at what they represent, like, as far as, like, a metaphor for humanity or whatever they're trying to do in the story, but the main thing that I need to care about a character is I need to have an emotional reaction to what they're doing. Whether that's angry, whether it's funny, whether it's, like, you know, I fall in love with the character, like, whatever, I need to get some sort of pure, like, almost animalistic, guttural, emotional reaction.
Like when you see a waifu.
Yes.
You gotta fall in love with them. You have to have like an animalistic reaction, and then I care about this character.
Yeah, and sometimes when I like watch movies with people, or like that maybe don't critique fiction as much as I do, where I'm like, they are so like, I love this character, and they're like, but like I hate them, and I'm like, exactly. Like if you're hating them this much, they're doing their job properly.
Yeah.
Because like the worst insult I think you could give to a character is they're boring.
Yeah. Good. I mean, many writers have said it, but like good fiction should make you feel something, even if you feel bad, if you feel uncomfortable, if it makes you feel like shit, like that's good. That's a good piece of fiction.
And that's one thing that I always like, me and Ariel butt heads about a little bit, where I'm like, no, but it's so sad. Isn't it the best? And she's like, no, I want to be happy. And I'm like, no, but sad is the best way to feel.
I thought you guys butted heads because you are butt heads.
Oh, that is also that. We are butt heads.
You were saying, Phil?
I don't even fucking remember.
I think that is as good a place to end that question as any.
So, recommendations?
Yes. So, I'll go first. I was gonna recommend Simonson's Thor, but I think we talked enough about how much I like it. The thing that I want to recommend is a book called Thors. It's a Secret Wars tie-in book, and it takes place in like this alternate reality. The context of it is complicated, but you don't need to know the context at all. The basic premise is every Thor from the multiverse, so there's like thousands of Thors, are the police of this world. So like it's basically a buddy cop book of all these different types of Thors that all represent these different facets of the character. Frog Thor is there. There's like the ultimate Thor. There's the regular Thor. There's like old man Thor. And it shows how when we talked about like Thor's nobility and like what makes him such a fun character, it's basically showing how you can tweak the character a million different ways and still tell a fun, compelling story. And it's basically them tracking down someone is murdering all the multiverses Jane Foster's, who is Thor's love interest. So someone's tracking down all of like everyone's counterpart.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's just a really, really interesting story. And it's written by Jason Aaron, and it's really fun. And I think everyone should read it. Even if you don't read Secret Wars, you don't have to. It's totally standalone.
That's cool. I know there are like several other superheroes who have like multiple versions of themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a thing.
Like you're the Earth 2 Josiano.
Exactly. So my recommendation, since I did like the whole frog story, if you're interested in that whole like animal court kingdom stuff, Mouse Guard is a really good comic.
Oh. I bought Phil Mouse Guard like 5 years ago.
Yep. And it's a comic about a kingdom of mice, and it sounds really weird, but they really treat it as if it's like in this story, they actually act as if they are a human kingdom, and they have knights, and they go out and fight bees and things like that, and foxes, and it's a really fun tale, and really, it's a good story. It's cute.
I have not read it, but I have flipped through it, and it does look awesome.
And it's like, it seems like a kid's story, but it's pretty dark sometimes too.
I've only read a little bit of it, but I liked it too, from what I read.
So what about you, Sly? Spoil it.
Okay, so I have two recommendations. One's a half a joke and one's more serious.
I actually have a second one too that I'm going to give after you, but it'll be very short.
All right, so my first recommendation, the joking one, is The Mutant Massacre. X-Men The Mutant Massacre.
Is that a joke?
The sequel to this.
There's nothing joking about that story.
I know, but like, just to explain. Ryan was saying, oh, this is setting up for something.
Okay, it's not that it's setting up. It's that there's a big X-Men story, and Thor shows up in it in Simonson's run, and it involves the Morlocks, and I think they only introduced that Morlock sewer guy so that if you were still reading Thor, Mutant Massacre would make a little more sense.
But just to explain how weird Marvel events were, because it took them a while to get it right, I feel like a lot of the early events had trouble managing all these different tones. Like you have Frog Thor, right? And then you have the Immune Massacre in X-Men.
And it's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah. So Immune Massacre is about the Morlocks, this group of mutants, are all being genocided. And the X-Men try to save the Morlocks. But what happens is, like, the X-Men are getting the shit fucked up. Like, half the team is, like, out of commission during the story. And people are dying. A lot of characters are irrevocably changed from this traumatic event.
This is also when you meet the horribly named mutant Tar Baby.
Oh, yeah.
It's a real character.
And I bring this up because Puddle Gulp, the frog, shows up in that story.
Yeah.
He shows up in the Thor issue.
He shows up, like, so you're reading X-Men, this X-Men story, and all of a sudden Thor shows up, and the frog is like, come Thor, you have to help, they're killing all the Murlocs, and Thor's like, I will stop this massacre. Literally.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Spoilin Sly over here telling us what happens. Like Crooked Hillary and Spoilin Sly. Lion Ted.
That's how Thor gets introduced into the story. The fucking frog says it.
Okay, I'm just...
Yeah, that is how he gets brought in, and he plays a pretty important part.
Yeah. And actually, I really love Thor in that story because, like I said, all the X-Men are getting the shit kicked out of them. And Thor is like a very visceral, what if a god just came in and fucked all the villains type of deal.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And also, Mutant Massacre itself is great. Like, it's a joke recommendation, as in, it's ridiculous how this ties into it, but it is a great story.
Yeah. But my actual recommendation for people interested in stories like this one, that are not about genocide, Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger has a character called Frog.
Chrono Trigger is a video game, right?
Yeah, yes. Chrono Trigger, the video game, is a video game.
Super Nintendo.
For Super Nintendo. You can get it on other systems, on PlayStation. It's
everywhere.
Reported to almost everything.
Yeah.
And it's about these kids create a time machine, and it turns out in a few years, the world's going to end. And their time machine... they have to use this time machine to try to stop this dark future, and it's possible not to stop it. Like, you can get a bad ending, and that's why it's a really cool game.
Sly likes anything that has the world end in it.
Yeah, that's why I love Ruins. But one of the people you can recruit is in older times. You can go and pick up Frog Man, who is a knight.
The best character in the game.
Yeah, best character in the game. That's why I bring it up, because he's very much like Thor, where he's a very noble knight, but he's a frog. And he speaks in, like, I shall avenge my honor and all this stuff, but he's a frog. And he's, like Phil said, he's the best character in the game. And it's a great game otherwise, so play that.
Yeah, like, if you haven't played it, just play it. It's so good.
So the other thing I just want to mention real quick, if you like anthropomorphized animals getting into fun adventures, read Wind in the Willows. It's one of my favorite books.
I've never read that.
It's so great. It's really just so much fun, and I love it.
The only reason I know that is because of that Simpsons episode where Lisa had to read it, and she didn't, and she cheated on the test to pass the exam on it.
It's like, you really don't know how to read. Just play video games and watch The Simpsons all day.
Ironically, that episode's about Lisa not reading the book because she's playing video games all day.
So, yeah, it's not a comic. It's got grown-up words in it, big words, the best words, and it's really great. And it's not that long.
I just want to, before we sign off...
We don't want to let the listeners go today. We just love them so much.
But
don't leave. We cease to exist when you leave.
We've been meaning to do this since, like, episode 10. But let's tease the actual next episode.
Oh, yeah.
Let's tease it. Ooh.
Now, keep in mind, we have not heard back from Never Enough yet. Because I only told him to write us in with a suggestion this morning.
Yeah. But I think... We'll do him after anyway.
Because, yeah, we'll do him after.
Yeah, no, but because we wanted to coincide this with the new upcoming movie, Ghostbusters, and we'll be doing a Ghostbusters comic to tie into that. Ghostbusters.
What's the name of the comic? I haven't read it yet.
Ghostbusters: The Other Side.
Okay, cool.
Considered the worst Ghostbusters comic by IDW, and it kind of is.
So if you want to read that ahead of time, there you go. So thank you guys so much for listening. We've been Divisive Issues. I'm Ryan Lynch.
I'm Sly Crappa.
And I'm Phil Maverickus.
Stay in continuity.